Nothing like a room going dark to quiet everybody down. Good evening. I'm Mary Pat Higgins. I'm the president and CEO of the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. And I'm so pleased to welcome you to our Funk Family Upstander Speaker Series. And I really appreciate you being here with us tonight. Before we begin, I wanted to take just a moment to acknowledge the horrific racially motivated murder of 10 people in Buffalo at a grocery store on Saturday. While it's terrifying that the mind of a shooter so young could be corrupted by the time he was 18 years old, it's sadly not surprising. Hatred is learned behavior, and the detestable rhetoric of white supremacy seems to know no geographic or demographic boundaries. Here in our own city, the FBI has opened a investigation into hate crime into the shootings that took place just a week ago at the local salon that injured 3 women of Korean descent. And if you're like me, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of the atrocities that are happening in our world. But we must continue to stand up for what is right and to work to promote civil discourse, pluralism, respect, and acceptance. And together, we must offer an alternate path through education and providing a supportive and welcoming community inspired by hope. Tonight, we'll be talking about offering supportive and inspiring communities. And it's my honor that the Funk Family Upstander Speaker Series, named in loving memory of Blanche and Max Goldberg and Fannie and Isaac Funk, was created in the spirit of this charge and of the museum's mission to teach the history of the Holocaust and advance human rights, to combat prejudice, hatred, and indifference. In this series, we highlight individuals and organizations who stand up for the rights of others and who see something wrong and work to make it right. I'd like to start by thanking our generous series sponsors tonight, Sesser Bank and Catherine and Sam L. Sesser and Match Group. We are so grateful for your support of the museum and of our programming. And I'd also like to give a warm welcome to our board members, museum staff, and volunteers. We couldn't put on programs like this without you, and I'm so grateful for all you do to support the museum. If you are here and you're not a member, I encourage you to go to our website and consider becoming a member, because your support would help us put on programs like this. So we're honored tonight to host 3 incredible leaders in our community who are working in a number of areas to support North Texas families. I want to leave plenty of time for our discussion, so I'm going to just introduce each of the speakers briefly. So first, Kathy Barker is CEO of Jewish Family Service of Dallas, and an experienced nonprofit executive with over 25 years leading both local and national social service and mental health nonprofits. During her time at JFS, she's also served as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Development Officer. And prior to her nonprofit work, Kathy was a licensed professional counselor in both hospital and private practice settings. Thanks for being here, Kathy. Next, Vanessa Maldonado is the Executive Director of Avance, North Texas. She's an Air Force veteran and Austin native, which so am I. That's awesome. She has more than a decade of experience in nonprofit leadership and development. At Avance, Vanessa serves some of the most vulnerable children and families in North Texas and helps ensure that Latinx families have the resources, education, and social capital needs to thrive. Vanessa, thank you for being with us. And last but not least, Marissa Castro-McCoy is the president and CEO of Jubilee Park and Community Center. Marissa's 23 years of experience in the nonprofit and education sector include roles with After School All-Stars North Texas and the Washington, D.C. Public Charter School Board. In 2012, President Obama's administration named her a champion of change for her efforts to improve educational equity in under-resourced communities while working with AmeriCorps. So excited to be in conversation with these incredible upstanders. But first, I wanted to remind you that we'll leave time tonight for your questions and answers. You should have received a note card and a pencil. So if you have a question, please write it down, and one of our staff members will come by and collect them, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. So now, ladies, I'm excited to dive into conversation.
We need some of these.
We do.
Yes.
Okay. Testing.
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 Good. So I've just said where you work. I would love it if you would each take a moment to share the mission and goals of your organization. Tell us about your important work in our community. Marissa, let's start with you.
Sure. So I have the honor of leading Jubilee Park and Community Center, and we're a nonprofit organization that is in Southeast Dallas. So that's right by Fair Park. And what we do is we serve as a catalyst to revitalize the community, and we're a place-based organization. So what that means is that our community center is right in the middle of a neighborhood, and we focus on 62 blocks, so it's about 3,000 residents, and we provide wraparound services. So everything that we do, all of our programs and initiatives are aligned to one or more of our program pillars of impact. So it's education, that's health, that's safety, housing and workforce, and opportunity, which is really economic development. And so really what we're trying to do is break the cycle of multi-generational poverty.
Hello, yeah, and I'm Vanessa with Bunson, North Texas, and I have the pleasure of working with predominantly Latinx families. Our focus is a two-gen approach in educating children and making sure that they are school ready, but also educating the parents that how to build social and emotional capital, and also to make sure that they have economic mobility. A lot of the families that we serve are stay-at-home moms, and so that isolation of being in the home with your child, not knowing, what's out there, what's next, is something we really focus on. That is the core of our mission, is that two-gen approach, and almost like your nonprofit, ours is to break the intergenerational poverty for the Latino community. We are predominantly in school districts. We do not have a physical space where we go in different schools. So we require heavily with our partnerships with DISD in Fort Worth. So we're in 28 schools and recently partnered with a few area museums and other nonprofits to expand our services.
Wonderful. Kathy?
Yeah. So I'm with Jewish Family Service of Greater Dallas. Our organization has been around for 71 years now.
Wow.
We provide social and mental health services to all in need. We like to say from ages 3 to 103. So you'll hear us talk about everything from preschool education and early intervention from the mental health services side to helping our Holocaust survivors as they age gracefully, and most of them wanting to live at home. Our services are available to anyone regardless of ability to pay. And for as long as needed. That's what makes us unique, is that it's a coordinated approach. We call it wraparound services because it's sort of like a one-stop shop. It prevents clients from having to go to multiple organizations to get the services that they need. And our services fall under several categories, including employment coaching and financial coaching. So the employment side, services to seniors, mental health services, which includes those to individuals with special needs, those with severe and persistent mental illness, and also those with family violence issues. And then we have what we call basic needs, which is our food pantry and emergency assistance services.
So I've heard you each almost talk about wraparound services, and there's no quick fix for some of these issues, right? Can you talk about how you try to address a problem through, using these wraparound services, homelessness, or, any of the issues that you're working to combat?
So I think for us, it's more of, so we do kind of a case management type area that we don't physically, we address mental health and to break the stigma that with the Latino community, because it's something that we don't like to address, but we help kind of find where the needs are. Because a lot of times there's a ton of services. We're all doing great work. It's just trying to find them is the hardest part. And so for us, it's, before I came on board, we used to do a whole variety of things. And for me, it was, what do we do great? Because we can't be everything to everyone or provide all these services. And so we said, okay, well, we do this, our parent-child education program, and our case management and mental health. And so with that, it's partnering with other nonprofits to ensure that we're able to continue that and create that foundation of trust in our community, that we're here to serve folks and through other partners that we're able to do together collectively, because collectively we can do more.
And I would just add, and I'm sure as many of us know, the communities in South Dallas have been really neglected and disenfranchised over the last 50, 60 years. And in the area that we serve, so the neighborhood that we're focused in, it was once a thriving middle-class African-American neighborhood. And back, that was in the 50s. And a lot of things happened, like I-30 was built. That really cut off the neighborhood from resources and access to the rest of the city. The State Fair was built, and I'm sure, like many people know, a lot of people were displaced and they weren't able to keep their homes. And so when you have that kind of systemic disenfranchisement, there are a lot of, what happens is you have a neighborhood that really kind of dies on the vine. And that's what we have been trying to address for 25 years. So right now, we do so many different programs to support the immediate needs of families in the neighborhood. And these are kids, babies with our partnership through Head Start, all the way through seniors. But the long game is really to address the systemic issues. Wow. And it's the, we've talked a lot. I said something earlier to someone I was talking to, this work is not about charity. It's not about just doing something that makes you feel good. It's about doing what's right and galvanizing the neighborhood to use their voice that's valuable and that's powerful to say we are just as important. And all of South Dallas is the size of Atlanta. It's huge. Right. But you've got the majority of our city that is, because in numbers it is the majority suffering. And so it's imperative that we continue to work together. Kathy and I, our nonprofits work together to really address the systemic issues. And it's, again, through that collective impact model that we're gonna see change. And it's for the betterment of the entire city.
Absolutely. So according to a United Way report from 2019, 40% of Texas families are unable to afford basic needs. Marissa, you said Jubilee Park has been doing this work for
25 years.
25 years.
This year is 25 years, yep.
Do you see the need increasing? Do you see that divide widening? We'll save the pandemic, think pre-pandemic, because clearly the pandemic has caused lots of issues that I want to talk about.
So yes, you can see the economic divide that's aligned to racial across racial lines. And I think that, again, 25 years ago, our founders decided to plant the flag in Southeast Dallas because it was one of it actually had the worst crime rate in all of Dallas. So there was a time when the sanitation department wouldn't come and pick up trash. Wow. It was not a safe place to raise a family. And it was, unfortunately, a place that the city forgot about. And so I think for years there's been a divide, but the pandemic really put a magnifying glass on what that disparity was and still is. And I think if there's any silver lining to it, I think the rest of the community is now seeing, and the rest of Dallas is seeing, oh, this is an issue. This is not because people living in poverty are saying, I'm just going to make a bad choice, or I decide to work 2 and 3 jobs.
Right.
And I think if I can jump off of that, part of also the challenge is we have different communities, some that have lived for multiple generations in the way that Marissa is talking about, but we have to also pay attention to what we call the working poor. So I think that part of what we've drawn a lot of attention to, and these are people that they fall within the fringe of basically being one paycheck away from falling off of everybody's radar. They don't qualify for a lot of the services that might be available. And so between our low to moderate income individuals and then the people what we call the working poor, that's your 40% and beyond.
Right.
That you're talking about, because we like to say at our agency that a lot of the individuals that come to us have these what we call life's unexpected challenges. And it can be a medical illness, forget COVID. Somebody's hip went out, or mom all of a sudden can't work and needs round-the-clock care. Well, nobody had planned for that, and most people we know don't have savings, and they're not ready for some emergency situation to happen. But what do? We take care of it. Right. I mean, that's just the way we're all set up. But unfortunately, that also puts people who are already on the fringe just more at risk. Right. And so I think along with what Marissa and Vanessa are talking about, these families that are completely locked off from having access to different services, you have other folks, and it's not really about access, it's just about, I don't qualify, at all for things like health care or daycare or SNAP benefits or.
And Kathy, your JFS has a more regional clientele. I mean, you're serving clients from all over the Metroplex, or at least all over
Correct.
Dallas, right? So this is not, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is this an issue that's really isolated to certain regions of Dallas, or is it something that families are experiencing all over?
I would say that different families are experiencing things in different ways all over. To what Marissa is talking about, and I imagine what Vanessa is also talking about, we have whole communities that are locked off either by access through transportation, access to services being able to get into them, or them being able to get out to the services. And then you have other people, they may have a car, but they don't have necessarily the means or the understanding or the pride to basically, there could be somebody who had a great job, and I've always done this, and I worked for 25 years, and now here I'm finding myself in this situation. I just literally retired, and I thought I had it all together. Well, then my mom fell, and she's in the hospital, and we didn't have anything ready to help pay for it. So that's where those individuals fall into different categories. So no, I don't think it's exclusive to certain populations, but we can't discredit the fact that there are areas, particularly in South Dallas and others, that need our particular attention. Absolutely. I think North Dallas is starting. Right. They have, but I think that there's a little bit of sprawl that's happening where individuals are trying to leave these communities where they were not able to access things, but now they're finding themselves in similar situations, just living with a more expensive zip code and a higher rent, right. Somewhere else.
Yeah. Marissa, we were talking about how the ethnic breakdown of Jubilee Park area has changed
yeah.
over the last 20 years, and what additional challenges has that presented as you've had sort of upheaval of a neighborhood?
I think because of the history that I talked about before, there's a real mistrust with the city, with elected officials, because again, 50 years ago, there were a whole lot of families who had the rug pulled out from underneath them. And you had the Black community who their homes were taken away because of the state fair, or there was a lot that happened a long time ago because of that. And these families moved further south, and the families that stayed there's a real distrust. And when we continue to do block walks, and during COVID, we were calling people and block walking to talk about the importance of getting a vaccine. And it was from some families that had been there for generations. It was like, I don't trust you, and I don't trust anybody that's coming from the city to say. So when there was the vaccines at the state fair that were open, a lot of our families were like, I'm not going. I'm not taking it. I don't trust it.
Did you see that, Vanessa, too?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of things, like what you guys are both saying, they don't trust kind of the systems that have been put in place. They don't know who to go to, so they're going off friends, families, what they hear unfortunately, a lot of the community that I serve, they get their information from social media. I mean, that's how we connect with all of our families, is through social media. During the pandemic and when we were still pushing our programs, they didn't have the means of, technology, so we were using WhatsApp, and so yeah, that was the biggest thing. We would tell them constantly, no, that's not correct. Like, listen to this. Let me tell you. I'm hoping that because they come to us, that they trust us, because that's, like you said, like they trust if they trust you, then they'll let you in. Right. And so we were hoping that would be helpful, but it took a long time, even for our staff, to get fully vaccinated. It took a lot of articles, a lot of conversations for them to be on board.
So, Vanessa, you mentioned the stigma surrounding mental health, and I would think isolation, and fear contributes to mental health issues. Absolutely, poverty does, and anxiety, the anxiety over that and providing for your family. Can you talk about what you're doing to try to help alleviate that stigma, to get people to come forward and get the help that they need?
Absolutely. So isolation is one of the biggest for our families, for our mothers, that they're at home caring for their children while their husband is out working. We do have men every now and then, but it's very rare. About 99% of the families that we serve that come to the class and do the mental health programs are women. And what they realize is they come into our classrooms through our parent-child education program and realize, I'm not the only one going through this, because they see 30 other mothers going through it. Or they're hearing, oh, wow, they're going through the same thing I'm going through. And so what we do is, the biggest component of that is we do a home visit. So maybe they're not comfortable speaking, because, again, building the trust. The Latino community is very much on trust. And that is, and they also don't want to speak about mental health. They're like, oh, they'll get over it. It is what it is. I mean, and we laugh, and we do. I mean, we talk about it very frequently. But unfortunately, that's just how they feel. It's like, no, they'll grow out of it. But what we try to tell them is that you might see something, this small trait or something right during this time frame. We don't know what it's going to manifest 5-10 years from now, or what it'll look like if they don't get help, because there's services out there. So when we do the home visits, we're able to kind of see them in their environment and things of that nature, and we're able to say, hey, like, remember this topic that we talked about, and then they come out and say, oh, you know what? I think I see that in myself, or my child, or my grandparents that are living with them. And that's where the services come in. But again, it's all through word of mouth. We don't have personal clinicians on staff. We have a case manager. So if there is something that they, after doing a few visits and needs assessments and things like that, we let them go through a case manager. But most of the time, it's just trying to get that change over time in their vision of what it actually looks like, and thinking it's not that bad. There's a lot of people going through it. Right. It's just it's not an isolated incident with just you.
And Kathy, JFS steps in with the clinicians, and can you talk about how you're supporting people in your community and in other communities?
Jubilee, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So several years back, and I think it's 5 years now, at Jubilee Park, we have added a counseling clinic. So we actually have two therapists and a intern housed at Jubilee Park, and when they speak of the trust issues, they're not wrong. I mean, it literally took our therapists a while of going to sort of social events and activities before the community would trust them and realize they're actually here to help us. It wasn't that they wanted something necessarily from them. I think part of what we've experienced with the different communities is people have always tried to somewhat take from them in some ways, or the visits that they've received from outside individuals have been Child Protective Services or somebody that's questioning the way that they're doing things. And so that's where a lot of these trust issues come from, is you want to prove me to be a bad parent, or you want to prove that I don't know what specifically it is that I'm doing. And so fortunately, we have strong partners like Jubilee Park to be able to help us open the doors for us in the community, them saying, you know what, these folks are welcome, and use them in the way that works best for you. And then eventually, as they experience working with us, then the trust evolves and they're able to access the services in a way that makes sense for them. We also did this in the Roseland Park community at the corner of 75 and Lemon, which is a historically Black community in a housing subdivision. And same thing, it took us a year of going in there, attending social activities, watching them play sports in their gym and everything, for them to realize that these therapists were a part of our community. And once they embrace you and accept you in, they realize we're genuinely there to help. And I think that's been something that we've had to do as an organization as a whole. Think of individuals who maybe come to us through our food pantry. It's easy for me to say, well, not easy, that's probably not, but if I know that I need food and I'm gonna call a food bank and I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna get food, what I don't realize is that good food banks are also going to try to find out, if you're here for food, you're probably experiencing something else that's going on in your life that's led to you needing food. And so organizations like us are going to be taking our case managers and looking at, well, what else can we do to help them get a job, or help them with their aging parent, or help them with their child that has special needs and maybe is struggling in school in those ways. But like Marissa said in the very beginning, very well, by the way, is we have to be having these conversations together. I mean, we all cannot operate in a silo, all of our different organizations. We've been around for 71 years, I get it. You know, they've been around for 25 years. You guys have been around but I've not met Vanessa before. There's something wrong with that. You know, we have to be having these conversations with each other so that we're not duplicating our efforts, and instead we're strengthening the community together. So.
So you touched on a point on food insecurity, and I mean, there are challenges across the board, but definitely in Jubilee Park, I think you're in what would be called a food desert. Can you talk about the implications of that for your community?
So what it means to live in a food desert, you don't have, a grocery store is not within a mile of your place of residence. So to give you context, in our neighborhood, the closest grocery store is Whole Foods, which is in Lakewood, which is a whole world away. Yeah. And you know, when you're
inexpensive,
very expensive,
whole paycheck, right?
Yep. Yeah. Don't go to the food bar at lunchtime.
Sorry. No offense to anyone that loves Whole Foods.
I love Whole Foods, but I spend too much money at lunch. But no, it's our families are getting their food there's a Don's Food Mart, which is what I would call like a bodega, like a small, you can get hot Cheetos, you can get a sandwich, you can get a burger that you can heat up, but you're not getting fresh food. And, you know, again, what the pandemic did is put that magnifying glass, the big spotlight on the lack of access to fresh food. And out of that experience, at Jubilee, we now have a food pantry. We never had a food pantry before. Oh, wow. But now we were adopted by Leadership Dallas, which is a program through the Dallas Regional Chamber, and they're right now remodeling our food pantry so that we can have freezers and refrigerators so that we can have fresh food for the community. But again, that is a Band-Aid. That is meeting an immediate need.
Is that in partnership with North Texas Food Bank?
North Texas Food Bank and Crossroads.
And Crossroads, great.
Yep.
Great. Again, an example of people
Yes.
working together and, providing the services that people need. So do you see, are there people that you know of actively working, trying to bring a grocery store to your neighborhood?
I've learned more about the grocery store business than I ever cared to know. But there are a lot of really wonderful people, elected officials, a lot of people trying to work on this issue. It's really hard because the bottom line is the profit margin for grocers is really, really thin. And there's a formula, what grocery stores use to decide where they're going to be so that they can make a profit.
Right.
And I understand that. Period. But it's just a human right to have access to food and fresh food for your family. And there are decisions that our families are making in their home and around food choices because they just don't have the grocery store down the street that they can walk to or go to access.
So we're speaking in the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about basic human rights that people in Dallas are not enjoying. Food security would be one.
Healthcare.
Yeah, definitely healthcare and access to mental health services. Things are, and it's not just access. It's something, can I get to it? Is it affordable? And is it something based on what my specific needs are? And I think that we have well-meaning groups, entities, organizations, around specialized care or services. But if I, as an individual, can't get to them, and if I can get to them and I have insurance, but I can't afford my copay, then it's basically like I can't afford it and it's not accessible to me either way.
Transportation, its location, its affordability. Are you, I know that the city has a lot of initiatives to work on these issues. It really will take all of us to tackle some of these issues, but are there a couple of initiatives that give you hope that you see that may bring about change in the neighborhoods you serve? And I know, Kathy, you're more, dispersed, but in any neighborhood that you're serving.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the direction that our community is going towards integrated care. Jubilee is actually a sort of a pilot project in the sense that many of y'all may not know that even though we're providing the mental health services at Jubilee, Parkland is now offering medical services at Jubilee. So they just opened a new clinic. And so you have that best practice approach to mental health services, social services, community-based activities, which include health and wellness, and then also the primary medical and dental services. Jewish Family Service is actually going in that direction as well, and we'll be bringing medical services along with our best practice whole person care services to the North Dallas area and other medically underserved communities. But we're not alone. Organizations like the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, Parkland, Reese Jones Foundation, they've all been doing studies for years. It's just up to our community to wake up and realize that there are solutions out there. We just have to get behind and talk to people who are the decision makers and know that this is the way to go. If we can help individuals to become both emotionally and physically healthier, and think particularly to children, and then we're also providing some sort of parenting support to these parents as their children are growing up, then these young children are going to grow up in a supportive environment, and then they're going to be successful as young adults and then help build up our communities in ways that we couldn't have ever imagined. But it is going to take a literal collective effort from all of us to do that, to help pull individuals out of these underserved areas and provide access in some way, through our organizations. But it doesn't mean popping up more and more nonprofits. It means garnering the support behind the nonprofits that are able to do it and want to partner with other agencies around solutions. And we are fortunate that in Dallas we have great organizations and we have a great community and leaders that want to help us get there. But yeah, it's a huge problem. We did a community health needs assessment. I think I told you about this, Mary Pat. And what we wanted to see is, is this really a medically underserved area in Greater Dallas? And when you look at other big cities like San Diego or and in other states, now granted they have Medicaid expansion, not getting into politics here, but basically they have what they call a 75% penetration rate. And so what that means is that in those communities of individuals that are considered low to moderate income or have insurance but can't afford their copays, the people that we serve, 75% of them have a local community health center that they can go to. And it could be their medical home and where they can access food and jobs and all of the great things that we're talking about. And in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and this was shocking, when we saw these numbers, we did the community health needs assessment, and Dallas has a less than 5% penetration rate. So what that means is less than 5% of individuals who need the services can actually even find them. So we have a big job to do in this community, and it's a heavy lift. But I'm fortified by knowing that great organizations like Jubilee Park and Avance and all of us are at least a part of the conversation.
Vanessa, Marissa, are you seeing any exciting projects that you want to, sort of in your neighborhood, that you think can bring about change other than the amazing work your organizations are doing?
So I can't talk about the health clinic that we're going to build.
You can talk about the health clinic. In addition, yes, talk about your health clinic.
There's a lot of great work happening in South Dallas, not just in Southeast Dallas. There's incredible organizations that are really, and I said this at the beginning, that are looking at communities living in poverty and why, and the why. And you can draw that back to equity and access and opportunity. And that changes the whole conversation. Because when you start looking at it as, this is not just charity work for people who are poor and have made poor choices, it's, oh my God, this is a big systemic thing. And I went through my own journey and looking back at history and policies and laws that were made and redlining and home ownership, all of that contributes to these neighborhoods and these people who for generations have been living without all of the things that a lot of other people enjoy. So I mean, the good news is I think the conversation has changed, and that's really exciting to me. And I think there are people, I mean, I'd say JFS is one of our most favorite partners. We work hand in hand, and truly the two therapists, behavioral and mental health counselors that work for JFS but sit on our campus are part of our team. They go on block walks, they know the families, they know the neighbors, and just we were talking earlier about trust, and I think you could say this for pretty much every culture. Mental health there is a stigma. I mean, I grew up in a household where like going to a therapist was like, no estoy loca. I mean, it's like, I'm not crazy. But what happened is once we were able to extend trust to Gustavo and Nancy, who are the counselors, they had a few people that they were seeing, and then those families started talking to their neighbors and their comadres and their friends. There's no recruitment. It's all word of mouth now. Sorry, I went on a different tangent, but I just wanted to say, like, that's the power of partnership and making a change, and again, changing the narrative of the why.
No, I love that you said that, because that is truly how we recruit our families. So our program is all done in Spanish. So all of our families are Spanish. Spanish is their first language. Maybe they've been here, their second, third generation, but Spanish is still, they're predominantly speaking in their household. And I think that and just to talk about a little bit, during COVID is what we realized when they weren't sending their children to school to keep them at home. So then when it was time to go back to school, they didn't know. What we've learned from the school districts is they didn't know how to engage the Latino community, the Spanish speaking, because that trust factor that Marissa's talking about is very much how we recruit our families. A lot of our teachers and educators that we have that employed now came from our program, because we teach them that in order for you to break the systemic issues that are happening every day, constantly, that we're still seeing, it's through education and engagement. And so that's such a pivotal part for us, is leadership and showing them. And they teach their children, and they realize, what's next for me? Oh my God, I did this.
Right.
So now I want to go out. I want to go find other opportunities. I want to go find mental health services for myself or my family members. I want to go back to school or get my GED or whatever it is. And it's so empowering for them when they see what they've done with their child, the learnings that they've been able to teach their kid for the last 9 months, that they want to go back and do more.
I read each of your sort of mission statement and goals, and I think maybe all three of the organizations, say every parent wants what's best for their child, right? There are bad parents out there, but in their heart of hearts, every parent wants what's best for their child. They just may not have the resources. Can you talk a little bit about the systemic nature? I mean, we know that the environment that a child grows up in impacts the adult that they will become. So the sorts of systemic issues, Vanessa, that you alluded to, and what we as a society can do to disrupt that and give the child a different path.
I think it's through awareness and education. I think them being able to know where to what we've learned is through being aware of what it looks like and being okay to address it. That is going to change the trajectory of a child. You have to be able to be okay and look at yourself in the mirror as a parent and be like, oh, okay, it's okay. Maybe they have this issue, or maybe I contributed. I mean, I laugh about this, and a lot of my staff members, I listen through our parent education program, and I'm like, I'm a single mom, and I think, oh my gosh, I wish I knew that. Why didn't I learn? I failed my child. But then I realize, look, if with learning and just reading and speaking to other people and having other individuals that are there to help, just like, we're here as leaders to say, hey, these are the services we're able to provide, and we want to spread the word essentially to everybody. I think that is such a pivotal moment in anybody's life, of saying, I can look at myself in the mirror and say, I need help, or my child needs help. Where do I go? And although the services, as Kathy said, it's hard to find, they're out there. It's just making sure that we constantly tell our story, put it out there for them to read it and hopefully find it, and do block walks and things like that, and events like that.
I could add to that. I think one of the benefits, blessings that we have at Jubilee is that we're a community center. We have a beautiful park that's attached to our community center, and so really we're a convener. And so not only do we have wonderful programs and support systems to provide for the neighbors, but it's a place to convene, and then the byproduct of that is that you have a network of support. So then it becomes, oh, I know that my neighbor that I met at Jubilee, who has a kid who's in the soccer program, we can have, that's my support system. And that's what's happened over 25 years. We have part of our campus, actually our 10-acre campus, it includes a DPD substation. So there are 8 Dallas police officers, there's code compliance, and there's a sergeant, a couple of officers, and a community liaison. And those officers go on block walks with us every month. And they know birthdays in the neighborhood. They help some of our seniors with grocery shopping. I mean, it is community policing at its best. And when I came on board, in the midst of, as we were talking of the shutdown, and we were on the.
Both you and Vanessa started during the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Which is very brave of
Don't
you.
suggest doing
Yes.
that. But I remember thinking, what's the temperature of the neighborhood on the tail end of Black Lives Matters and George Floyd, and what is that going to look like and feel like, and then with the pandemic. And we didn't see what I was seeing on the news all over the country, and I really attribute that, and I think, you know, the officers at our substation say it too, it's the relationships that they built, and it's not, you know, DPD officers that were there to catch people in an act. They're not just there to arrest people. They're there to be part of the community and to be part of the neighborhood. And I think that is just so powerful in developing and creating a neighborhood that is really connected and that supports each other.
So I started life as an accountant and kind of have a business mind, which gets me into trouble sometimes. But what I'm thinking is, how can we make Jubilee Park scalable? You know, how could that model be carried out throughout all of Dallas, definitely all through the southern part of Dallas County, because it's working. You still have struggles. There's still challenges. It's not solving every problem.
There's a lot of beautiful things that are happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Have you thought about how
I
you
get
could
asked that
replicate
question
it?
a lot, and I'll say it's having a visionary, but it's having an army of people that pull on resources to make it happen. And then the other thing is two things actually, understanding the community. So what we do at Jubilee Park and the way we do things, the way we design programs probably won't work in a Pleasant Grove or a Bachman Lake or in a West Dallas. We have people from the community that work at our center, so there's that. But the other piece is having your neighbors in your community inform what you do and be a part and walk alongside you as you design, as you advocate. And I will say,
Don't do for, do with.
That's right.
people,
That's right. And it should be, I've said this a lot to my team. I don't see my role as I'm the person speaking on behalf of 3,000 people in the neighborhood for what they need. Of course, I do that a lot, but my role is really to provide the platform, to open up the door, and to say, here's the microphone. And then the neighborhood does that. That's the power. That's how you ignite change.
And I don't know that it's necessarily perfectly replicable.
Yeah.
Because I think if we've learned anything in our years of serving different communities, is that they're formed under different auspices and different reasons. And I think what's special about Jubilee Park came together exactly the way you described it, because it was a moment in time and it had the right people and it had the right energy and everything behind it. So it's really up to us to create that in other communities. In answer to your original question about what it is that we need to do to really help move these communities along, or to help our youth and families to grow, in a certain way, I would say that I always come back to hope. Most of these individuals don't have hope. So unlike you or I grew up in a family where you go to school, you go to college, it was just expected. And I had a path that we talked about my whole life. A lot of these individuals that come from low-income communities are just in survival mode, and they don't have a path and they don't see a path. I am not a sports person, and I know the Mavs are playing tonight, and I will tell you, but part of what I do want to tell you is sports has done a lot for our low-income communities, because think about what it's like for a young kid to see somebody who's made it. They come and they visit, and it's, and so what they're able to do is instill hope. And so if I say anything that you need, whatever it could be, and it's going to be different for every community and every different culture, is if you don't give somebody a path forward and you don't instill hope in some way, there isn't a way out. You know, it has to all start with that. And so when you say what's a basic human right, you know, is that we have hope in some way.
I love that.
And it's beautiful, and it makes me so sad that so many people don't have it. Right. And I started the program tonight talking about the young man that killed 10 people, and somehow he lost hope.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a challenge that has really horrific ramifications. Destruction of yourself or your family, but others. We all need to work to prevent. So I'm so inspired by all of you. I want to know what we could do to help your organizations. I think people want to be helpful and be a part of a solution and don't really know where to start. And so I'd love it if you'd give us some ideas about things that we could do and we could share with others that they can do to be helpful. I'm better at telling other people what to do.
I got a whole laundry list. I think first is, educate yourself on the why. When you don't know or when you don't grow up living in an environment like the folks that we're serving in an underserved community, there's a reason why. And so really do your research and understand the why. And then get involved where your heart pushes you, and that you can't go wrong.
Absolutely. I think just to kind of touch on that a little bit, I think we all want to do great things and we all want to volunteer, and we see all these nonprofits that are doing amazing work, but if your heart isn't in it and there's no passion or connection, it's always a connection to the mission and the people that you're serving. I think that's where the true impact comes from. And I definitely have seen that just taking on this role. And it truly is, even when you're telling the story, it's more, people can feel it, that you really truly mean what you're doing and that you really are trying to make an impact.
So my response may be surprising. I'm going to say, and granted, most of the people involved in our organization are Jewish, so you can relate to this. Be nosy, okay? Be nosy. As much as I get these strange phone calls of people like, did you know about the, and everything, those are the connections that matter. I will tell you, Jubilee Park is here because a member of the Jewish community opened a business near there and was nosy. They walked over to the community center and they said, "What the heck are you? And why are you here?" And then basically, yes. Exactly. And so went over there, figured it out, and said, "Hey, you need to know this organization over in North Dallas. They might be able to help you." And so what all of us need are those connections. So for me, it's be nosy, call me. If you have something, I will listen to the strangest of phone calls, and I will say that they have ended up in remarkable relationships, because the first thing that people always start, and Mary Pat, you probably have this too, is this probably means absolutely nothing to you, but I have an aunt of a cousin of a this, of a that, or something. And they had this crazy idea about X around your mental health services. Have you thought about this? And I'm like, no, tell me more, and then it ends up in special needs services for children on the spectrum, or it ends up in services for seniors, or so that would be we're like the perfect example.
We are. Yeah.
So what could we advocate for from a city or county-wide perspective that you think would make change? Because we can volunteer and we can also be advocates for change, right?
The things that people ask me, what keeps you up at night, and it's health, having a health clinic, which we're working on. It's a grocery store, it's a bank, it's a pharmacy. It is those basic resources in a neighborhood that north of I-30 neighborhoods enjoy. And it's shining a light on that. And, I think for us, the goal really is to have a mixed income neighborhood where you have people who are protected and not displaced because of gentrification, but you have people who have lived in Jubilee Park for 50 years who are living alongside other, people who aren't under-resourced. And I think that's like the true sense of community and how I want Dallas to be.
For us, it's more because we don't have a physical space. We do have a building where people come and work and supplies and have meetings, but we don't have, for us, we rely heavily on partnerships. So providing that space to do our parent-child education program or our mental health or case management, we rely heavily on that. So that's what it's more partnerships so that we can expand our services through the space that they give us.
Is there, and I won't get too wonky because we want to have time for questions, but is there an office of the city that's working to try to connect all of the organizations that are doing this work? You've talked about an incredible partnership and how that has made a difference. Is someone looking for those opportunities citywide?
So I'll tell you what's interesting is, and I know you don't really want to talk about COVID, but the COVID response is a great example.
I do. I meant to come back to COVID.
So I'll tell you that if all of y'all remember CARES Act funding that was awarded, so the government gave out big pots of money to the cities and the counties. And then do y'all know what really happened? Is the cities and the counties called the nonprofits and said, but we don't have case managers and we don't have people that are going to be able to, and it was smart of them to do that because they didn't have the resources or the background or knowledge on all these very complicated issues that were going to come, to be. But basically they looked to us to solve it. And fortunately, we're sophisticated enough to know we don't know all the answers, but you know what? We know each other, and so we're going to work together. And so that's how we were able to help things like part of the housing crisis. Did we solve it? No. And I don't know that we will be able to. But I wish, let me say, do I wish that there was an entity that was in charge of coordinating all of us? I would say that if there is in our community, it's going to be a lot of the family foundations. It's going to be more from the philanthropic community that does make a concerted effort to say, have you talked to this organization? I see you're doing this, and they're coming to talk to me about that. Have you talked to this organization? And it's not that our city and public officials don't. They're so busy.
Right.
I mean, they're solving potholes and, all these other things, too. And they know that we're here to do what we do. But it is a challenge.
So I welcome questions from the audience. If any of you have questions, I do have a couple I want to start with. And we've talked about affordable housing, and you actually have affordable housing in the park. Do you know how Dallas compares to other cities in terms of affordable housing and quality of housing for low-income families?
I don't know that I can answer how we compare to other cities, but what I do know, what I've learned about affordable housing is that the housing stock in South Dallas is very old and very poor. I know that there are a lot of people living in apartments and paying a lot of money for rent that is. And I will say it's criminal. The good news is there are a lot of wonderful people in the city that are fighting this, and that's on the slumlord side. So, but it's happening, and I see it when we're doing block walks. The other piece is there are families who have had homes for generations, and they don't have the money to keep up with their homes.
Taxes or the
or just to make the repairs that a home would need. So foundation repairs or accommodations for mobility. And we do a lot of help, but we support the neighborhood. So we do minor home repair. We lean on the city for a minor home repair and a major home repair program. But there's just, it's not just in our neighborhood.
Right.
There are 750 homes in the neighborhood. And again, the housing stock is qualified, and SMU just did a study on this, but it's poor to very poor. And so I think the next phase of our work is improving that housing stock. And, we haven't been able to build new homes because the cost of construction has just been,
skyrocketed.
I think I said this earlier, is bananas. It's just been bananas. We haven't been able to do that. But that's something that, I look forward to us tackling.
So we have a question about gentrification. It sounds like gentrification in the Jubilee Park neighborhood has not been an issue yet.
It's coming.
It's coming.
I see it, yeah.
Are you seeing that, Vanessa, in the area you serve?
So we're all over the Metroplex.
Oh, okay.
So we see some of it. Some of our contracts are very zip code based, and because of that, we'll see that there's no way we can provide or find those folks to serve. So we'll have to go back to the contractor. But because we are all over Dallas-Fort Worth, it looks a little different from us. It's not geographically bound all the time.
Okay. So the question specifically was, has it played a role in increased need for your services? And the
add
answer
to my
is yes.
list of what keeps me up at night.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's coming, and I've shared this with a lot of my board members. I, on a regular basis, get calls from developers asking if we'll sell our community center. We have neighbors that come to us, and there are people who are knocking on their doors saying, I'll give you $75,000 cash for your home right now. And if you think about that, $75,000 cash right now is very enticing. That's a lot of money, but you can't go anywhere with that.
Right.
And so there is a real sense of urgency on our part to educate our neighbors with don't get
that.
sucked into that.
Right.
So, I think, again, this is the long game, but it's galvanizing the neighbors, advocating at City Hall, looking if we can have a tax freeze for people that live there, entice developers to build more affordable homes. I mean, really, again, back to that mixed income model, but we've got to protect the neighbors that are there right now.
Right. And I've read that people that get the housing voucher, which is hard to get, I think, a federal housing voucher, but it's almost impossible to find an apartment or a place that will accept it. Are you seeing that?
Yes, and we're actually looking at one of the many projects we have on the list is to build an additional housing project for housing structure for low-income seniors. And we've started conversations with DHA, the Housing Authority, to look at vouchers and there's a finite bucket of money and there's no more left, so we're going to have to wait till the next cycle. So it is, there's a great need for it, and there's not enough of it to go around.
Have your organizations considered employing community health workers to reach the individuals you serve?
Yes. And it's really exciting. One of our councilmen in District 7, Councilman Basil Dua, reached out to me and said, we've got a little bit of funds, but, what can we do to combat the mistrust of people getting the COVID vaccine? Because in South Dallas, the penetration rate, I think, is like at 36 or 37% compared to the rest of the city of Dallas, which is like 60%. And we said, community health workers, let's do this. So it's something that we're looking at. Again, it is one-on-one, door knocking. I'm talking to an individual family, and then I'm right there able to give you whatever you need.
Right.
And that's not just the COVID vaccine, that's a shingle vaccine, the flu vaccine, all of it.
Yeah. Great. So a couple of you have talked about block walking. Can you explain that, what you're doing when you're block walking?
Yes, it's so fun. If anybody would like to join us, once a month, our entire team, along with the Dallas Police Department, so our friends that are right a part of our campus, partner up, and we map out the 62 blocks that we serve. And we take blocks together. We go in pairs, and we go door to door once a month, and we say hello to our friends, and we share what's happening at the center, what resources are coming up. I mentioned we're opening a health clinic So we talk about that every month. This is coming. There's going to be construction, but we're so excited. And we have a focus group where you can come and give your input with what we have. So it's really an opportunity to connect with the neighbors. And I will say what I always see is just the state of housing, because I walk in to a front porch I'm like this, and I make a note, and we go back to our housing and workforce manager, say, like, we need to see if we can help this family. So it's just a really powerful exercise and activity, that literally exercise that we do every month to connect with our neighbors.
And for us, we do it mostly during the summer to get folks registered. So we go to all the 28 campuses that we're at in that area. We get a team, and kind of the same thing. It's all day just going door to door saying, do you know about Advance? Or do you know about the programs that we offer? Have you enrolled? Do you have children who need, younger kids? Because we only serve parents who have children 0 to 4, and they're not enrolled in pre-K. So we try to get them enrolled if it's in Advance, if not into pre-K or kinder.
We're going to do block walking.
Come on, Kathy.
Well,
I know.
Gustavo and Nancy go block walking with us.
21 zip codes. A lot of zip codes.
So I think, well, this is an interesting question. Have state and federal programs improved or regressed over the last few years?
That's a complicated question, because, some funding has gone away or been reduced, that is critical. Other services have increased or improved. It honestly waxes and wanes based on what's happening,
And I guess through COVID, you were saying that the CARES funding has provided some resources that weren't there before. Mm-hmm. I guess the fear of that is it's gone, or it's going away. There's still some money that's left to be spent, but we didn't. I meant to come back to COVID, and we've touched on it a little bit, but I think, one of you said that COVID really has shined a light on the disparities, right, and helped people understand. But do you see that people are still paying attention, or do you see that we're switching to the next issue, and that the temporary spotlight has shifted to something else?
I feel like it's very much a part of many of the people we serve, their lives. A lot of the folks that had experienced these health disparities and didn't have insurance are the ones who got sick. Yeah. Those are the ones who have long COVID. So now, originally, it was a health issue, and now it's an employment issue, and now it's a how do I take care of my child issue. The ones who were these low-income communities, or those that were struggling, or and goodness, it was our entire population of people who are having to teach their kids from home. They're still behind, and so they don't have answers to everything, and now they're trying to reacclimate to everything from we're ready to move forward, we're ready to start eating in restaurants and doing all these normal things, whereas for them there's still that huge fear. I had 3 family members that died from this mysterious illness, and maybe you or I didn't have that experience, and for them, they directly were impacted, and death was at their door. And so now I read all these articles in the New York Times and everything about what's happening to these 15 million people that are not going back to work, and all these jobs that are open. It's a lot of things. It's that fear, it's that apprehension, it's that I'm still caring for people who were affected, not necessarily just by COVID, but the same problems that they had before COVID that just got exacerbated by it. So, no, there's a huge amount of issues still out there.
And do you see, I guess the second part of my question is, early in the pandemic, we were all talking about the disparities and wanting to do something about it, and there were a lot of efforts. My sense is that has changed, that people are not as focused on it as they were early in the pandemic. Is that fair?
No, I think my experience has been, it's definitely still a part of the conversation, because, we're 2+ years in, and we're still seeing the impact on our neighborhood. on people that are underserved and under-resourced. So
But do donors still care? And
I mean, I'm still talking about it.
yeah,
I'm still
good. You're keeping
bringing it up.
there. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and the data is there.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. It's not just my opinion
Right.
or what I've heard. It's what we're seeing in the neighborhood, and we're looking at employment rates. We're looking at household income. We're looking at what is happening with our kids educationally. So the impact is long lasting, and I think that the wave has crashed,
Right.
but the impact is still going. We're still going to see it for years.
See, and I think, I'm in a different nonprofit lens, and I'm worrying
Yeah.
about hate crimes and,
Sure.
prejudice and hatred all day long. My sense is that absolutely you all are in the trenches, and you know that will have far-reaching, ramifications, but that the general public has sort of turned on to what's next. That's a fear, and I don't know what to do
Sure.
about that.
Well,
But that's kind of my sense, not living and breathing it
Sure.
every day the way you
Sure.
are.
Sure. No, that's fair.
I would say the onus is on us, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like our organizations have to keep the conversation going because and it's not any fault of a donor or any fault of a community. I mean, every time, how long, there was a big tornado here, right?
Right.
Not that long ago, and everybody's probably forgotten about that, except for the people
Right.
who lived with it and were directly impacted.
Right.
And where those things didn't change. So I think the onus is on us as a community and organizations to keep the conversation going and to make sure that if there's something directly impacting, say, my organization, I'm talking about it and I'm sharing that with people who I know want to be a part of the conversation. But it's very easy for us to get caught and I could speak for myself, to get stuck in your emails in your day-to-day and just, all those very important things. But we can't lose sight of what it is that we're here to accomplish. And so for us as an organization, we're going to make bold moves. We're going to keep having these conversations like with the Jubilee Parks and the Roseland Parks, and we're going to get out ahead of some of these things. And for us, it's going to mean integrated care. It's going to mean whole person approach to how we address it. And I think, but no different than how we've been doing it in the past, is it's also individualized care. Just because it's something that I think is right for you or me, or this is the normal way to do things, all of us are experiencing, there is no normal path for these families. I don't deal with the worried well. That's not who comes to our, I think I have a little bit of problems, with it. These are people with complex intergenerational issues. And so we have to meet them where they're at. Right. And so customizing our care, talking about it, making sure that we are doing things in a way that is both culturally sensitive, that is meeting them where they're at, I think that's the best approach for all of us.
So I could keep asking you ladies questions all night, but I'm going to end with a question. It's a good one to end on. What is your personal why as it pertains to your work?
My goodness.
I can talk on that a little bit. My personal why. So I've been in the nonprofit world for quite a while. And I love what I did previously, which actually brought me to North Texas and kind of opened my eyes to what philanthropy looked like here. But my why, I say this often, I didn't really I didn't find my passion until I took this job because I had such a close connection. I was that mother. I had that family. I lived that life. And so for me to be able to tell that story and to tell it and see the eyes and see the folks that we're impacting, that I know that there is something at the other side for them. And to lead them there, that to me keeps me going every day. I truly, it took me 38 years to find my passion in life, and I've truly found it.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Lots of people are still looking.
I think mine is two-pronged. One is it's totally selfish. It fills my cup. I love it. I love this work. And then second, I mean, really, if I boil it down, it's the right thing to do. This is what I think I am here to do, is to help make the world a little bit better.
You're going to make me all weepy.
I know.
I can
just
tell you're
felt my-
getting all like weepy. So I was a therapist in my first career, and I can remember thinking, this doesn't feel, I'm helping people, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. And so whenever I've done self-reflection, over my years, the thing that I keep coming back to is, as corny as it sounds, if I could make one life breathe easier because I've lived and I'm here, it's good enough, for me.
Awesome. Now you're going to make me weeping. Well, I just want to thank you all for the work that you do in our community, for being here tonight. All those people that are watching the Mavs instead of being here really missed out, because I'm inspired, and I'm so grateful for the work you're doing in our community. Thank you. And thank all of you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a lovely evening. Be safe going home. Thank you.